Okay, thank you everyone for joining today. My name is Marc Drumm. I'm an instructional designer in the Office of Distance Education, and this is the webinar on going beyond PowerPoint. So we're going to look at other things that you can do while making your course videos that kind of take you beyond just using your typical PowerPoint slide deck. And what I'm going to do for this is I'm actually going to switch over to the desktop here because we're going to look at a few different things. And just give me 1 second. So, okay. So before we get started with that, I highly recommend checking that out. I call Voicethread kind of the discussion board on steroids. So you can have a discussion using this tool, but instead of just typing out text for everybody to read, you can actually record yourself. You can record audio, you can record video of yourself making your initial post or your response to somebody else. And if you're even having technical problems, they give you a phone number that you can call in and use your phone to record audio. So it's a very thorough, robust application for having conversations. It's been around for a long time, so it's very solid, very stable. Great tool. I recommend checking that out if that sounds like something that you're interested in. Plenty of other webinars coming up too, so keep your eye on this list. Also check out our website, and we list them on there as well. So let's talk about what we're going to get into today. So whenever I typically see the videos that faculty make, I would say 98% of the time, they're using Camtasia, they're using a PowerPoint deck to just kind of go through the content that they want to record. And that's great. I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with doing that. And, by all means, if that's what you're comfortable with, continue to use that. But what I want to do today is throw out some ideas of other things that you can use within your video. So if you're using a product like Camtasia, it is designed to record everything that's on your computer screen, which means anything that you can put on your screen, you can record. So keep that in mind. And so let me give you some ideas then of things to incorporate within your course. And the first one that I'm going to start with is Google Earth and Google Maps. Anything that you discuss that is location based, you can consider using Google Earth or Google Maps. So let me fire up Google Earth here. And I'm gonna throw out a scenario. Okay, so let's say you are talking about Escape from Alcatraz. Okay, this is either the book or it was later made into a movie. So you're teaching an English course or a lit course or a film study course, something like that, and you're discussing this particular work. So what you can do is give your students sort of a sense of what this place looks like. So let's actually bring up Alcatraz on Google Earth. All right. And there's a whole bunch of pictures and other things like that. I'm going to turn that off so those don't get in the way. But let's back up here. Let's zoom out a little bit. All right. And the reason I want to do that is so to oh, you've been to Alcatraz. That's fantastic. I've never been. I would love to. I've never been to San Francisco. I would love to go there. Um, it's on my, I guess you could say it's on my bucket list. That's one of the great U.S. cities that I have not been to. So hopefully I can get there at some point. But if you're familiar with the story, or if you're not familiar with the story, um, the essentially what happens is there are three guys who have committed crimes and have been sentenced to time in Alcatraz, and they figure out a way to escape. And what they do is after they get outside of the prison and they get on the island, they have made a makeshift boat out of raincoats, which is quite an accomplishment in and of itself. I have no idea how you would go about doing that personally, but they've done this. And what they do is they get in this makeshift boat and they travel in the boat north to Angel Island, which, as you can see, so here's Alcatraz here, here's Angel Island up here. And this is how they make their escape. So if you're teaching this in one of your courses, one of the things that you can do is give them a sense of, okay, not only here's what this looks like in terms of terrain, but now let's talk about, all right, how far is this exactly? How far are they traveling in this makeshift boat to Angel Island? So what you can do is you can go up here and you can turn on the ruler tool, right? And then you can draw a line. Whoops, I lost my ruler tool. And why is this being difficult here? Whoops. Let's change that to miles. And there we go. So I'm going to make this path, all right? So now I've got a line that goes from Alcatraz to Angel Island, and it can tell me here how far that is. So that's actually about 2 miles, all right? So pretty impressive, paddling in a makeshift boat made out of raincoats from one island to another for 2 miles. I guess you could probably change that to nautical miles. I have no idea what the difference between nautical miles and regular miles is. So still you get something that's, fairly close to 2 miles here. So now you're actually giving them a sense of how far this is and what it is that they had to go through in order to go from one place to another. So that's one thing that you can do with Google Earth. The other thing too is you can actually look at a place over time. So what Google has done is they've gone out and they've gotten all these satellite images taken, from over time all the way back to, mid 1900s. I mean, we're talking about when satellite images have just first kind of become available. And you can kind of look at these over time to see how a place has either built itself up or changed or what have you. So let's just go not too far from Alcatraz. Let's go to Las Vegas. All right. So we're looking at Las Vegas now. I'm going to kind of zoom in a little bit closer to where the airport is. Okay. And I don't know if you notice this. It's a little hard to see, but down towards the bottom left, there's this little thing that looks like a clock that appears. And a year that's next to it. And I've moved my mouse over it, and there's a little pop-up window that says, click to see historical imagery from 1950. Okay, so what we're looking at now is a fairly recent satellite picture of Las Vegas. But if I click this here, okay, what I get, and let me turn off kind of some of these extra features so they don't get in the way. What I get here now is I'm actually looking at a satellite image of Las Vegas from 1950. And as you could see, you know, there's the airport and the runway, and it looks like there's a couple of buildings here. And if I zoom out a little bit, you know, maybe a couple of buildings up here, right there a little bit. Not a whole lot in Las Vegas at that time, all right? But what I can do is I can kind of move this slider that's up here in the upper left-hand corner, and it will continue to cycle through images that Google Earth has over time. So as I'm doing this, all right, let's kind of, okay, so now we've moved into 1965, and as you can see, it's starting to, the area is starting to build up a little bit. And now we're in the 80s, area is building up a little bit more. 93, this section over here, they had an image for, that's built up a bit. Now we're getting into 2000, 2004, quite a bit going on. And then now their most recent picture, which looks like was March 2015. And that's kind of where we are at this point. So as you can see, we went from basically nothing in 1950 to this huge city within a matter of 65 years. So, you know, if you can, on an area that's like this, you know, you can really dramatically show how things have changed over time. Somebody said Dubai would be another good example of this. I think that would be great. Now, obviously, you know, if you can't go back and watch them build the pyramids in Egypt. I mean, of course, we didn't have satellites back then. That's not possible. But, you know, considering the location that you're looking at, you can take a look and see how has this area progressed over time. Nice exercise for maybe an economics class. You know, something along those lines. So the other thing I want to talk about with Google Earth, and I'm done with Google Earth, I'm going to kind of switch over to Google Maps. And there's a great website called Tripline. And what you can do with this is you can put together what one faculty had called an Indiana Jones map. Okay, so if you've ever seen one of the Indiana Jones movies, he's always traveling from one place to another to try and go catch the bad guy or whatever that is. And they show on the map as they're traveling, you know, the cities that he's in, and there's a red line that kind of draws across the map, and then it goes to another city where he's got to stop and maybe change planes or get on a boat or something like that, and then the line continues to another city, and so you get this path, right, of where he started out to where he's ended up to continue on to his adventure. And Jones map. So here with this site, what you can do is kind of create something like that. You can create an Indiana Jones map that walks you through going from one location to other. Now, this particular example of what I've shown here is someone has marked up the last known path of Malaysia Airlines Flight 370, right? So here's the path, right? If I move over the dots, I get a little more information, but I actually can kind of, you know, walk through this. So if I step through it, here's something where it says, all right, they started out at Kuala Lumpur International Airport at this time, at this date. And as we continue to step through the map, okay, there's the last contact, and the signal was lost. But then it was tracked over land, over this town in Malaysia. And then finally, this was the last known location of it before it kind of went off the radar, and that was it. So you're stepping them through a story based on location. And if you scroll down here, here's all the text of um, uh, each point in the map. So, all of the information that there is about this is included on the bottom part of the page. Um, you know, Great way of walking through this if you're talking about news in your course or current events. If you're teaching a history course, here's one that mapped the march from Selma to Montgomery, Alabama in 1965. So you're talking about the civil rights movement, and now you're stepping through. Here's where it began. Uh, Here's where it continued to go, and what happened along the way. Um, if you scroll down, you get the information. But what this person has also done has embedded some YouTube videos in along with the explanation. So you can actually see some footage of this happening here. Maybe this is a news report, and that's going to tell you a little bit more about what was going on at that particular spot. Same thing if you scroll down, there's another video down here. So, here is a great piece of content that you can include in your course, both as part of your video, right? So you can show the map, you can walk them through the map and talk about it. And then if you make this available online through your course, the students can go and read through it on their own and get some more information, maybe see some pictures or videos related to this and whatnot. So really neat tool. So that's all I'm going to say about Google Earth and Maps. The next thing I want to talk about is specialty software. So in a lot of courses, there is a particular program or programs that you might want your students to use, something that is not as common as, say, Microsoft Office or a web browser or things that people are using every day. And if you have that piece of software on your computer, you can record that along with your video. Remember, you can see you can record anything that's on your screen as part of your video. But I also want to remind people about RamCloud. It did get a little bit of press around here, so to speak, when it first came out. But I think I don't hear people saying much about it, and there is quite a bit of software, a specialty software out there that you can use from any computer. And if you've never seen RamCloud before, or if you want to access it, you just go to this website here, access.wcupa.edu, and you put in your username and password. And I'm going to do that here real quick. And I'm just going to hide that. And what you get over here is a little menu where you can click and you get a list of all of these applications that are available to you anywhere as long as you have access to a web browser. So if you're making a movie at home, you don't have that particular program on your computer at home, this is a way to get to it. So, if I want to fire up Maple, I'm going to click that. And Maple, if you're not familiar with what that is it's a mathematics, specialty mathematics program. I don't know a whole lot about it. I know little bits and pieces of it. But what I've done is I've selected it, I've started it, and it's basically just pretending that you have it right here installed on your computer. And it loads up and you're off and running. So, I can kind of type in some things here. I'm going to assign the value of 81 to variable a, and then I'm going to say, what's the square root of a? And then I'm going to ask it, so it gives me the answer 9 there. I'm going to ask it what's 2 to the 6th power, and it's 64. So if Maple was a person, it would be laughing at me right now because these are incredibly simple things for me to ask it to do. It's a very powerful program. There's all sorts of graphing and it can handle very complex equations and whatnot. But I just want to show you, this is the actual program available to you through your web browser. It does everything and anything that the regular program does. So don't forget that it's there. Take advantage of it if these are programs that you use within your course. Close this up. Next, emulators. So we had a few weeks ago. This is a real example. We had somebody who is teaching a course in the MBA program come over to us, and they said there is a calculator that we require all of our students to have for various courses in our program. And what I would like to do is make some videos showing them how to do particular things within this calculator, because it's a financial calculator. It does specific things that a regular calculator cannot do. I don't know a whole lot about it, but it does do functions that are related to various financial matters. So our first thought was, okay, well, we're going to get a document camera and we'll hook it up to the computer and we'll just stick a calculator below it and we'll show him pushing in buttons and things like that. And that worked okay. There were some lighting problems, and the camera would zoom in and out as his hand was pushing the buttons on the calculator and whatnot. And it worked all right. It got the job done, but it wasn't the ideal solution. And in poking around on the web, what we found out was that the manufacturer of this calculator, which is Hewlett-Packard, what they do is they provide a program called an emulator, which is basically just a digital representation of this calendar, of this calculator. So you run this program, and what appears on your screen is kind of what you see right here. You see what looks like the calculator, and all of the buttons are there. And if you click on the buttons, they do exactly what the regular calculator's buttons would do, and the results show up on the screen, on the pretend calculator screen there. And it's a much better solution for making a video compared to trying to show the actual thing, underneath a document camera. So now he is making his PowerPoint slides, and he puts them in for kind of like this. He puts some information on the left-hand side, and then he's got his emulator up here on the right-hand side, so he can click on buttons and pretend he's using it while he's showing, while he's making his movie that is showing his students, how to use this. So if there is a particular piece of electronic equipment that you want to demonstrate in your course, it may be worth a minute or two to kind of go out and see, does the company make an emulator or some sort of program like this where it can be a representation of what I want to demonstrate, but as a program that sits on my computer. Really great solution. In this particular case, they provide this program for free to educators. So all he had to do was fill out a form, explain who he was, send them part of the syllabus, and the next day they had sent him a link to download the program, and that was it. Really easy, really nice solution that worked out for him. So just something to keep in mind as you are making your videos. The last thing I want to talk about is iPad mirroring. So as I said, anything that appears on your screen, you can include as part of your video. So wouldn't it be nice if I could include, my iPad for a couple of reasons? I mean, one, I can draw on that, right? I can, use my finger or use a stylus and draw things on there. And it also now gives me access to hundreds of thousands of additional pieces of software, right? Anything that's on the iOS operating system, I can now show on my video. So in order to do this, if you have a Mac, it's actually, the ability to do this is actually already built into your Mac. And all you need is the USB cable that came with your iPad and the QuickTime software, which is built into the Mac operating system. So there's no cost to do this whatsoever. If you're using Windows, this is not built into the operating system. You have to buy some sort of third-party software that will do this sort of thing. And there's a program called Reflector. I think it's $10, $15, somewhere in that range, but it will do the same thing. So, not very expensive to get access to iPad capabilities and the software that's on it. And so what I've done is I have gone ahead and I have hooked up my iPad to this computer. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to hide this, and I'm going to hide this, and I'm going to run the QuickTime software. And I'm going to come up here and I'm going to say File, New Movie Recording. And it's going to look for something to record from. And right now it's going to grab the video camera that's built into the iMac that I'm using here. But I don't want to do that. I'm going to come down here and I'm going to change the camera to my iPad. And once I do that, it'll take a second. I'm now seeing everything that is on my iPad. And since it's on my computer screen, I can record it as part of Camtasia, and now it's part of my video. So now that you have this, what can you do with it? I'll give you a few quick examples. One is there's an app called Doceri, and this is a nice little whiteboard app, okay? So what I can do is if there's something that I want to talk about, some sort of problem maybe that I want to work through, I can just use my finger or use a stylus. I'm going to use a stylus here and, just write out my example. So if I'm teaching a math class and I want to do a little algebra here, let's see, I'll say 3 minus 2x plus 4 equals negative 18. And so as I'm writing this and talking this, they're seeing it as it comes up. So let's multiply this out. 6x plus 12 equals negative 18. And then we need to subtract 12 from each side. So what we get, and that's actually adding a negative, so we get that. Negative 6x equals negative 30. Divide both sides by negative 6, and what we have is x equals 5. Did I do that right? Negative 2 times 5 is negative 10, plus 4 is 6, negative 6. Yep, I think so. So I've now gone through my my problem right here on the screen, and I didn't have to show, like showing the calculator before, I didn't have to get out a document camera, I didn't have to get out a piece of paper and, write through the problem and everything. They could see it right here on my iPad screen. Handwriting's a little messy. I'll get to that in a second, but my handwriting in general is pretty terrible, so that's part of the problem. But the other nice thing about Doceri is that there are a lot of different backgrounds that you can use. Okay, so again, if you're teaching a math class, you can get some graph paper in there, or you can get some axes in there, right? So let's clear that out, right? So if we're talking about graphing there, right, there's my x equals y, and let's change the color to red, and there is my x equals y plus 2, right? That's a nice little feature. It's election time, right? So you can get out the map, and now you can be Wolf Blitzer, right, at the big screen. So let's see. Hillary won Florida, and she won Illinois. And she won Massachusetts, but let's switch over to another color. Bernie won Michigan, and he won Vermont, and he won New Hampshire, right? So hot topic right now is the election. Get up the map and start talking delegate numbers and whatnot. And if you have your own images that are on your iPad as well, you can load those in there, start annotating things and whatnot. So uh, great app. Doceri is. It's free. There is a there is a paid version that has a few more features in it, but the free version is fine, I think, for what most people want to do. So check that out. Um, Speaking of math, let's see. I'll throw out another couple of example apps here. Here's a graphing program called Desmos, Desmos. It's also free, and I can do. Let's see. Let's just start out with a blank one here. So now I can start plugging in formulas, right? So there's x equal y. Let's see, x equals y plus 3, right? So as you're plugging in formulas, it's graphing for you. There's also a lot of great built-in things. So here's some parabolas. Neat thing about this is that you have your formulas on the left here, and then you have some values plugged in for the various variables, right? So A, B, and C all equal 1, but I can just kind of move the slider back and forth for A, and now the graph will respond and show me what happens when I change those values. Same thing with B here, or whatnot. So that's another really neat feature of this app. A lot of great things in here: trigonometry, calculus. Here's a sine, curves. So again, neat little app. It's free, and it can really help you out if you're doing a lot of graphing in your course and you want to show some examples that way. Here's another one. So let's do something in the medical field. All right, 3D Brain. Neat little app that was produced for free. I think they got a grant to do it. And it's just kind of this little virtual brain here that you can move around and you can look inside and move up and down and whatnot. And there's all sorts of struggles and structures and things that you can look at. There are labels and whatnot, so I can turn on the labels and it's going to tell me what all these things are. If there's a particular thing I want to look at within the brain, so let's look at the thalamus, right? There it is right there. And again, I can kind of move it around and look at it and whatnot. So if I'm teaching anatomy, if I'm teaching psychology, I want to talk about particular parts of the brain, great little demonstration app here to walk you through that. And then finally, this is kind of talking about getting away from PowerPoint, but I know that people aren't going to completely get away from it and whatnot. So let's talk about using PowerPoint on the iPad a little bit, right? So most of the Office apps are available for the iPad. The nice thing about the license that Westchester has is that you get the fully featured versions of all of the Office programs for iPad. So if you just download PowerPoint for iPad off the App Store, it's very limited. You can look at PowerPoint files, but you can't edit them. You can't really do a whole lot or whatnot. But here, download the PowerPoint app, sign in with your Westchester account within the PowerPoint app, and now you get all the features for all of the Office apps that are on your iPad. So what I've done is I've connected it to my Box account, which is a file sharing, it's a cloud-based file sharing program, and I'm going to load up the PowerPoint that I made for this particular presentation, right? And here's where it can be a little bit nicer compared to just using PowerPoint on your desktop or laptop, right? So now I can go and I can start my slideshow, right? And I'll scroll through. And if I want to draw on here, I can do that. Now you can do that with the desktop version of PowerPoint as well, But now here you've got your finger, you've got a stylus. It can probably come out a little bit better than using your mouse, right? Kind of hard to write things with a mouse. Okay, so I can just kind of come down here and say I want to draw, and I'll put a little arrow there, and I can say, hey, there's Mark, right? But, you're teaching a math class, you're teaching some sort of class that uses formulas or whatnot, uh, you know, write them out along with your PowerPoint slides. Write notes out along with your slides. Point to various things. Circle them on your slideshow. And now you've added a component that you didn't have in your desktop presentation before. Now, I said before I would say something about handwriting and whatnot. Handwriting when using an iPad is better, okay, but it's still not as great, right? It's still not going to be as legible as actually having a pen or a pencil and writing on a piece of paper. So for those who are not aware of this, Apple has recently come out with newer technology. They have a stylus that's called the Apple Pencil, and they claim that they have solved a lot of these issues with the legibility and the pressure, the angle that you hold the pencil or the stylus or whatnot. All of these things affect how readable what you write is. So what I had hoped is, I have an Apple Pencil, I have an iPad Pro on order, which is the only iPad at the moment that works with the pencil. I was hoping to be able to show you something that would be able to write a bit more legibly, but unfortunately, the iPad Pro has not come in yet. I have the pencil; it's right here. I'm dying to use it, but still waiting for the iPad Pro to come in. So check back, maybe if I do this again at a later time, I will have something a little bit more readable to show you. But at any rate, let's switch back to Adobe Connect here. And we'll just kind of sneak through to the end. And that's all that I really have. Does anybody have any questions that they want to ask? And I'll tell you what I'll do is if you want to type them out in the chat box, that's fine. You can do that. But I'm also going to turn everybody's microphone on. So if you want to ask a question that way too, you have that option. And if you're thinking, while you're thinking about it and whatnot, don't forget every Friday, 11 a.m. Eastern, we're always doing one of these webinars on a topic that is related to teaching online. So don't forget, check out our website. We usually have a list on there of what is coming up. So if there aren't any questions, oh, looks like we may have one here. Yes, it's called Desmos, Desmos. Great little app. It's free. Go out and grab it. It is a really neat little tool. I mean, there are so many of these neat little apps out there that are free, and I can't even come close to have touched as many that I would love to look at. But if I come across a good one, I usually like to mention it and kind of get the word out about it somehow. So yes, so that plotting software is called Desmos. So check that out. So if there aren't any more questions, I'm going to wrap it up. If you think of something later on, you're always free to contact me. There's my email address and my number there, and there's the contact information for all of the instructional designers in the Office of Distance Education. There's also my Twitter handle there. I am a huge Twitter user and a longtime user of Twitter. I am on there on a daily basis. So if you want to see what I'm up to, come check that out. I try to post every day. Don't always get to it, but I'll try to post every day and whatnot. So thank you all very much for attending. I appreciate it. And as I mentioned, take a look at our list on our site on our Friday webinars and see if there's something in the future that may interest you. All right. Thank you. Have a great weekend.